Hey YouTube, what is good? We're back at it, and this week I'm gonna show you how I will retouch an image taken by the phone, which is the Huawei P30 Pro, not sponsored at all, in Photoshop, and see what we can come up with from the milk bot shoot we had with Marika. So let's roll that intro and let's dive straight into the retouching part. So first things first, I've opened up Capture One, as you can see on my screen, and I'm gonna go through the images I've shot with my phone, which is a Huawei P30, not in the Pro mode, but just in like normal. You open up the phone, you take some snapshots, because the goal was to create some behind the scenes shots just from the shoot. Now, as you can see on these images, they are pretty tall, which is logical because it has some sort of panoramic mode on it. So these are the images just shot straight out of the mobile phone. You can even see my foot here on the edge. And just for the people who don't believe me, if we scroll down on the left side, you can see that it's shot with a Huawei. Yeah, the model is probably a technical model. And these are the settings it's shot with, totally automatic. I didn't do anything. So let's go through them and let's decide which one we will be exporting into Photoshop to retouch. Let's see. I think this is one I like. So they are already marked green, but I'm gonna mark them by just hitting Ctrl J. This one is a cool one. This one as well. So we have two images. Let's see where we've put them. So by hitting Ctrl or Command J, I'm taking them from the capture folder and moving them into the selects folder, which makes it easy. So when I click on select, I have already apparently three images. This one, and this one. So when I hold down the shift key, I select them all and I change it to this view, multi-view. I can have all three of them together, so it's easier to make a final selection of which image I really like. So let's see, I like the curves in this one. So I think I will be going for the first one, since I like the S-curve a little bit more. The only thing that's bugging me is the hand that's not there. So, and here the hand goes too much. The attention goes too much to the hand. And this one is still cool, so I'm doubting the second one can go. That I'm sure, so I'm gonna delete that. So it's between left and right. And I think I'm still gonna go for the left one. So let's focus on that one. And let's first do some raw adjustments in this step. So first things first, we're gonna play around with white balance and stuff. So I'm gonna see what it says when I take, with my eyedropper, a piece of the white bot, because I know the bot is white. And when I do that, it neutralizes the white balance a bit. And then it's a matter of enabling exposure warning. So what does exposure warning do? When I lift it up, you can see that it tells me now where the red parts are, everything is blown out. So let's reset that. Let's reduce the highlights. Let's enhance. If we enhance it too much, you can see that because this is the part where the deep octa was hitting the model. So I'm gonna reset this again. Gonna reduce the highlights a bit. Enhance the shadows a bit. Enhance my exposure a tiny bit, like a third of a stop, which is totally fine. You won't have any quality loss since we're already working on a JPEG out of a mobile phone. And then I will be exporting this out into Photoshop, which is set at Adobe RGB color space 16-bit 300 pixels per inch. And I will not be resizing it, but I will be exporting it into Photoshop. So let's export it into Photoshop by hitting process. And then when everything is good, you can see that Photoshop opens up. I've already opened it up to speed the process up a bit. And then when we have this image in Photoshop, the first things we're gonna be doing, like all the other tutorials we've did, is we will be retouching skin. So first things first, I'm gonna take the spot healing brush. I'm gonna duplicate the background layer because we don't want to work on the background layer just for future purposes. If we want to go back or something, And don't forget, I'm retouching this with an XP pen Artist Pro 24. So I'm gonna be just removing the things that bug me. So let's first change these things. So let's remove some of the little pimples, like also the water drops on her forehead. We will be removing. Now the image is not sharp on this end, but that's not really important. In these kind of images, it's not about are they sharp, it's more about what vibe can we create in these kind of images. So let's first do the healing process. So in the healing process, I'm gonna be removing all the things that bug me. So for instance, this little hair, this line. So I'm just gonna drag over it, let go, and then Photoshop calculates what it has to adjust. Also, there are some minor scratches on the side of the bot. There we go. There we go. There we go. There we go. So that's one of the first things. Now I'm gonna be cropping it in because, yeah, we don't need my foot here, and this part has no purpose at all. So I'm gonna be changing my ratio to, let's see, 4:5 is Instagram size. So if I change this to something about that, is it still okay? Let's see if we can get perhaps the eyes, but then we lose too much of the curve. So let's try something like that. Let's see what it says. Let's rotate it a bit. You can rotate it by holding down the R key on your keyboard or just selecting the rotate tool on the right side. Now, if you have rotated your screen and go like, oh no, how do I have to go back? Just hit the escape key, button on your keyboard and it will reset this thing. So after we have cropped the image, you can still see that there's a little like black circle going on this side. So I will be taking the healing brush again, making it and cleaning it up so that it fills up. When it doesn't do the job, you just hold down the clone stamp, for instance, so which is S, and make sure that, like, when you sample, you tell Photoshop to take this part and just copy it over it. And then to blend it all together, you can still go over it a bit with the spot healing brush, which the shortcut key is J. So that's this part of the step. So this is gonna be cleaning. So I'm gonna be calling this layer cleaning. And the next step will be dodging and burning. Now, dodging and burning is nothing more than making things brighter and darker. So I'm just gonna create a curve, or let's do it this time another way. I'm gonna create a new blank layer. I'm gonna be going to edit, fill, and I'm gonna fill it up with a 50% gray layer. So I'm gonna hit 50% gray. I'm gonna hit OK, and I'm gonna change the blend mode into soft light. Now, if we're dodging and burning, it's easier to see things when we are using a black and white adjustment layer. So let's add that to the mix. So I'm just gonna add solid color again. Let's do gray, which is 128, 128, no, which is not that. 128 should be added here. There we go. So this is like middle gray. I'm gonna hit OK and change the blend mode into color. So this is an actual representation of the color in black and white. Now, if we want to make things darker and brighter, I got some brushes, which are just normal brushes. So one key important thing is make sure that your brush is soft. It has a flow from 1 to 3% to build things up slightly. In Photoshop, the key is building up things slowly. So a flow between 1 and 3%. And if you paint with black, you make things darker. If you paint with white, you make things brighter. And by holding down the X key on your keyboard, you can change quickly, like between front and background color. So if we know that, I'm gonna be zooming in and trying to blend out the differences in skin tone. So I'm gonna be just like, now my flow is set to 10%, which is too much, you can immediately tell. So I'm gonna take a brush, 3%, and I'm gonna be slowly building things up. And just slowly painting over it. Now this is a process. It takes some time. If you want to have some more contrast in the image so that you would be able to see it better, you can create an extra adjustment layer, curves, and drag, create some sort of contrast in the image. So this way you can immediately tell where you have to dodge and burn. So, and don't forget, like, this is too much. I'm gonna change to 1%. And then you gradually start just painting everything in that bugs you. Don't forget, you can also rotate it visually by holding down the R key. And just painting it in. So the thing that bugs me, that distracts me, I'm gonna paint in a bit. Nothing too crazy. This is the boring part when watching tutorials, but I want to keep doing it real time so that you can see that I'm not making any weird adjustments while I'm not filming it. And don't forget, it's not just the face, it's the entire body. Now, if you want to speed things up and you don't want to put too much time in it, also don't like go crazy and do this. Make sure to keep it zoomed out as we work. I'm gonna change to black. Now, this technique also applies to images shot by a DSLR or any other camera. There we go. So when I enable and disable this, you can already tell that we smoothened out skin tones a lot. Now, I'm gonna be grouping these two into a group, and I'm gonna call them help. Just because it's a visual aid, it doesn't have to stay, or it doesn't have to stay enabled. So when I undo, you can tell the difference immediately by just looking at the screen. Now, another thing we're gonna be doing is using frequency separation. Frequency separation is splitting up the image in texture and contrast. So what I will be doing is running my action, which is Gaussian, a median blur instead of a Gaussian blur. Now again, like I mentioned in previous tutorials, if you want to know how this works specifically, look up some other tutorials on YouTube, or let me know below and I will make a dedicated video on this topic. So let's see. 10 is way too much for this kind of image. 5 would be considered okay. And I'm gonna be using a mixer brush with the settings all set to 20, 20, 20, and the only thing I'm gonna change is the flow. I'm gonna make my brush small. I'm gonna start by pushing color from one area into another. So it's not like, yeah, mixing colors, it's more like pushing colors. So as you can see, this is a really strong technique. Now it depends what you want to do. You can, in the end, you can use only this technique, or you can only use dodge and burn, or a combination of both. If we're doing high-end retouching, this is not the way to go. Then it's real dodge and burn. But since this is an image shot by a phone, nope, I'm gonna undo. Don't forget your best friend is undo, which is Control Z or Command Z on a Mac. And then when I look at the image already, I'm gonna show you the progress so far. So this is already a big change in image. Now, let's check. So we've done, I'm gonna call this DB from dodging and burning, cleaning, frequency separation. Now the most enjoyable part will be coloring this image. So there are a million trillion ways to color an image, It's totally personal. I'm gonna show you how I do it. It doesn't mean that that's the only way to do it. So keep that in mind when doing this kind of thing. When I hit color balance, we have it divided into shadows, midtones, and highlights. So when I'm gonna hit shadows, I can color the shadows. If I do midtones, I can change the midtones in the image. And if I do highlights, I'm only targeting the highlights, which are the brighter part in the image. Now, this is not the way we're gonna tone this. So I'm gonna remove this layer and I'm gonna start again. So I'm gonna do again a color balance. I'm gonna change it to the shadows first. I want it a little bit more bluish. Let's see. Bluish and reddish. A little bit more purple in it. So it's just dragging the slider any way you want to go. It shows you visually. If you drag to the left, you introduce cyan into the image. If you drag to the right, you introduce red into the image. It goes for all the colors. So I want my highlights to be a little bit more yellowish, like that. And now I will be playing around with selective color, which is also an adjustment layer. So I'm gonna click this icon down below. I'm gonna select selective color, and I will be targeting specifically my red and my yellow. So I'm gonna make my reds a little bit darker, which is by dragging to the right the black slider. The same with the yellows. Drag it to the right, and now it's just a matter of how do you want to color it. Since this is the first time I'm toning this kind of image, meaning I've already toned it on my images shot with the DSLR, but this is the first time me toning it on this images shot by the mobile phone. And don't forget, you can do multiple layers of selective color, of curves. You're not limited to just only one. So don't forget, if we're toning the image, you can build it up by adding a curve on top of a curve on top of a curve, and it always builds up from the point where you've ended. So I'm gonna do another selective color. I'm gonna focus this time on the whites. Let's see if we neutralize the whites or make them a little bit more white and blue, not green. We don't want green. Yeah, this is cool, I think. There we go. And now let's see if we can play around with a gradient map. So if we select a color here, this will be the color we use for the shadows. So let's go for something crazy. Let's go for something orangey. I want the shadows to be orange, and I want the highlights to be bluish, not so bluish, somewhere around here should be fine. Hit OK. Change the blend mode to soft light or something else, but I'm gonna reverse this. Nope, it looks crazy. I'm not gonna reverse it. And then you can, after the fact, go back into it, double tap on the color and change it again to something you like. Let's see. This is cool. It's way too much now, so I'm gonna reduce the opacity like a lot. 30-ish should be fine. And I'm still missing some three-dimensional feel into the image, so I'm gonna go back into my layer stack and I'm gonna do some contouring by using a gray layer, the way we did the dodging and burning in the beginning. So keep in mind, we're gonna group these layers together in a group, call them color. And after the frequency separation, but before, I cannot mention this enough, before you apply colors, you do the dodging and burning. So we're gonna create a new layer, fill it up with 50% gray, shortcut key is Shift F5, change the blend mode to soft light, and now with a soft brush, flow of 1%, again a soft brush, so these are my settings, hardness 0 or 1, and with these settings we're gonna really create some depth into the image. And build it up slowly, don't go like rush it, just take your time with it. And if we see with before, after, and this is just on a normal image shot by a phone. So keep that in mind. So when we disable this, I still want a little bit more light on the face. So I will be creating an adjustment layer curves, which is just a representation of your histogram on the camera. On the left side, we have the shadows. On the right side, on the top, we have the highlights. And in between, we have the midtones. So I'm gonna be dragging this one up, something like that. But I don't want to have this effect applied to the entire image. So I will be adjusting it on the layer mask. The layer mask is this little white thing. So I'm gonna be inverting this layer mask by just hitting Control Command I, which is invert, or you fill it up with black. It depends on which method you prefer. And now it's up to me to decide with white paint where I want the effect to be visible. Now I'm gonna be using a gradient, and I'm gonna be using a radial gradient, which allows me to click, hold down my mouse or my pen, and then drag it out. Now my layer mask looks like this. So it's a little bit of a radial filter, which you have in ACR or Lightroom. But this time I control where I want it and how much I want it. So I'm gonna be doing it like that. And now for me, the highlights and the tones are the same. So we have the lower, we have the upper body, and then we have the face. And in regards of lightness, they are the same for me. Just by changing this a little bit. Now you can do the same, duplicate this layer, invert the layer mask. And now, if we remember correctly, the white part is the part we will be adjusting. So the curves layer, I will be dragging down. So you can see you can create a natural kind of vignette. Now this is way too much, but you can play around with it. Now I'm gonna leave it as bright as it is. So I'm gonna undo this. But yeah, that will be the final image. So if we have a look at before, by the way, you can do this by holding down the Alt key on your keyboard and clicking on the icon in front of it. So this is the original. We did cleanup using dodging and burning. We did cleanup by using the spot healing brush. Then we did dodging and burning with a 50% gray layer. We used frequency separation to even out skin tones. We used another dodging and burning, but this time for contouring. We added light to the face with a curves adjustment layer. And to finish everything off, we did some color work. Now, if the color work is too bright, you can always play around with the opacity of the group. So I'm gonna try around 50-ish, 20, 30, 40, 50. Let's go with 40. And let's see if we enable. So this is a subtle change in colors. So yeah, that's about the entire effect. So let's see. So this is the way I normally edit my images, all my images. But as you can see, it doesn't matter if the image is coming from a phone or the image is coming from a DSLR. It's just a matter of what image you have and what vibe you want to create. Because let's be honest, if we export this into Instagram, it's all good. There's no laws of quality, since everything nowadays is social media, online, digital. Like when I zoom in at 100% on the image, you can see some little artifacts, but in the end, if it's just for publishing online, and you don't need that much megapixels to make a print. So yeah, if you got questions about this tutorial I've just showed you, don't forget to get in touch with me below, send me a message. I will be gladly to reply. If you got questions about the tutorial, feel free to get in touch. And then, yeah, one little thing I just ask of you is just hit that little like button, subscribe to the channel so we can grow a little bit more and keep doing these kind of videos. And that's it for now. Enjoy your day, and then I'll see you when I see you. Ciao, ciao.